Let's begin.
Burn, ungodly filth!
What do you want? To make you ours or to make you despair?
Spirit Blade Productions presents...
Do you have any idea how much I will make you suffer? The horrific agony that I will inflict.
Spirit Blade Dark Ritual.
Hell will be a refuge for you when I'm finished. For more information, visit spiritblade.com. Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Ant-Man and the Wasp? Stick around and find out. That's a deep cut. That's a deep cut. It's a score from a movie. A bit of score from a movie. The only hint I'll give you is Michelle Pfeiffer. Let me know in the comments if you have that one figured out. Deep cut. Really love that theme. Tragic, beautiful, haunting. Anyway, hi, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of Ant-Man and the Wasp. The synopsis on IMDb reads, in the aftermath of Captain America Civil War, Scott Lang grapples with the consequences of his choices as both a superhero and a father. As he struggles to rebalance his home life with his responsibilities as Ant-Man, he's confronted by Hope Van Dyne and Dr. Hank Pym, that's Hope's father, with an urgent new mission. Scott must once again put on the suit and learn to fight alongside the Wasp as the team works together to uncover secrets from their past. It's no spoiler, I don't think, to say that the secrets specifically they're looking to uncover, they're trying to rescue Hank's... Did they get married? Did Hank Pym and Janet... Well, they call her in the movie Janet Van Dyne. I thought they were married, maybe not. Anyway, Janet... which I really want to say is Hank's wife, but it's definitely Hope's mother. They're looking to rescue her because she was lost in the quantum field like decades ago. She had to shrink down super small. This was talked about in the first Ant-Man movie, so you should know this. But she shrank down way too small because there was big trouble, and the only way to solve the problem and save a bunch of lives was her to shrink down to go into the quantum field, you know. I could get into a side issue about... and Scott Lang, and the character even jokes about, you guys just put the word quantum in front of everything? There is a lot made about, like, quantum theory and what it can prove or not prove about the nature of the universe and all that kind of stuff. So people throw around that word a lot, but there are multiple quantum theories, and so you have to even, like, ask, okay, well, which theory are you talking about? Because there are, like, I don't know how many, maybe close to a dozen or something more? I'm not sure, but anyway, a lot of people throw quantum theory at things to make it sound smart and scientifically established, but anyway, so they definitely have fun, with the word quantum in this movie, but basically they're using it to talk about being super duper duper super subatomic small. So anyway, the mission in this movie is to see if they can rescue the original Wasp, you know, who was lost decades ago in the quantum field. Let's talk about the story and the script and the pacing a little bit. If there's a spectrum of like the amount of seriousness or humor in a Marvel movie, you know, and you've got like Iron Man way over on your, if you spread out your arms, and in the tippy of your left hand finger, you've got Iron Man 1 and maybe Captain America Winter Soldier as being ones that like had humor in them, but also had gravity, you know, and were allowed to really sit in the gravity and weight of some dramatic moments, you know, for minutes at a time. You know, I think of the death of the man who was with Tony Stark in the POW camp, if that's what it was, at the beginning of the original Iron Man and stuff, and that was a formative moment that was allowed to have weight. And of course, Captain America Winter Soldier, there was just a lot more seriousness, even if not maybe necessarily heaviness, but a lot more seriousness. So that's way down on that left, the tip of your left finger, you know, stretched out on that side of your body. Then stretch out your right arm, and I would say the furthest we've gone out on the right limb would be Thor Ragnarok, where it's like, this is almost the Tick. This is almost a spoof of superheroes. It's humor to the point where it's making the quote-unquote heroes actually incapable, and it just, yeah. It's like straight, almost straight comedy. So this I would put just shy of Thor Ragnarok, actually. This is pretty much a straight action comedy. Not my kind of comedy for sure, though it did get 2 to 3 chuckles out of me, which is something for me in Marvel movies. I'm long past, being disappointed or frustrated with how little I enjoy most Marvel movies. The recent exceptions, which I think I've mentioned before, have been Avengers Infinity War, which was allowed to have some weight, Black Panther, which didn't have, I would say, maybe the same weight as Infinity War, but like Winter Soldier, I felt like it stayed serious for longer stretches of time. And I liked Spider-Man Homecoming, but not because it was more serious. I actually think it had a lot of humor in it, but it was humor that grew more naturally, I felt, out of who the characters were. So rather than, feeling kind of forced. So, but anyway, I'm long past, feeling disappointed or frustrated with the Marvel movies. I mean, these days I'm most interested in them when I sit down to watch one. I'm most interested from I guess what I would say, a detached business standpoint. Like this, I enjoy them kind of on a meta level now, because I'm watching a movie, I'm thinking, what is their strategy overall with the Marvel movies? Because it does seem to be changing or in a state of flux, because like I said, Spider-Man Homecoming, that's an anomaly. Let's take that out of the picture. But Black Panther and Infinity War do seem to be going more heavy. I can imagine different reasons for both of those being the case, so they're not necessarily representing a new trend. They may just be, individual things going on in those movies that would not be typical of other Marvel movies. So apart from those, there does seem to be a gradual shift moving more towards comedy. Towards comedy, not just as tension relief, but at the expense of even presenting tension. I think for a while it was, they would have a little bit of tension, just which would get less and less prolonged before, boom, it's interrupted by, a joke or a gag of some kind. And really what I felt with Ragnarok and with this movie was we were moving to comedy not just as tension relief, but actually at the expense of presenting tension to begin with. Though I do have to say with this movie in particular, the lack of tension I felt might also have been due to the script, which took regular detours from the plot to play out these kind of comedic dialogue bits, almost like really, really short interrupting comedy sketches would be how I would describe them. And this tendency made a lot more sense to me production-wise when the end credits attached not 1, not 2, but 5 writers to the script. So the scattered feeling nature I felt in the plot and the individual scenes may just be, a symptom of way too many cooks in the kitchen. That's what I think was probably going on. The main quote-unquote villain in this movie isn't really a villain, which I think that's an interesting change of pace, because I think even those who really love Marvel movies, many of them would agree that the villains have been the weak points. They're not really developed or interesting characters, in terms of their motivations and stuff like that. And so I think doing something different was a step in the right direction with this one. And we've seen some, I think Black Panther had a better villain. I can't remember what I thought of Thanos, but anyway, I thought doing something different with the villain in this one was good, but it's still, I don't think it was as good as the villain in Black Panther. This villain, quote unquote, was really someone in a tragic situation taking a dark path. So, a villain that had, kind of like a Magneto or like a Parallax or something like that, but then you add to this quote-unquote villain 3 other antagonists in the story. There's an FBI agent, there's a black market dealer, and then there's one antagonist that I won't spoil. So with so many in the mix, they really, all of them kind of became watered down as sources of antagonism to the heroes in this movie. In truth, I think they could have all been deleted and the core story would be intact and it would still be a good one. This movie isn't really a fight between good and evil at its core, but it's an adventure story about Ant-Man and the Wasp trying to find and rescue the Wasp's mom from the quantum field she was lost in decades before. And even though there's a huge lack of psychological realism in that story, I mean, no one's concerned that her mom will come out this babbling lunatic after being in this incomprehensible shrunken state for 3 decades, There's no concern about that. And but even so, it was still the central reason for me to be invested. That rescue mission was the central reason for me to be invested in the story. Without the added complexity of so many side antagonists, I think they could have given so much more time to that story and made it much more powerful and rewarding for me. As far as the cast goes, Paul Rudd is back as Scott, whatever his last name is, Ant-Man, and his jokes felt a little more natural and Paul Rudd-like, a little more often to me this time around. I'm not sure if he was one of the writers of the first movie, but he is credited as one of the writers in this movie, so maybe that's the reason for that. Michael Douglas is back as Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man. He does a solid job, but it was interesting. I detected some slurring in his speech that made me wonder if maybe his age will prevent him from doing another Ant-Man movie after this one. It'll just be interesting to see, but hopefully his health is doing well. The standouts for me, though, in the cast were Evangeline Lilly, who plays the daughter of the original Ant-Man and Wasp, and Michelle Pfeiffer, who plays her mother in, I believe, her first appearance in a superhero movie since playing Catwoman in Batman Returns. These two actresses brought the heart and drama that I really needed to be invested at all. They were all too brief moments for me, but I was surprised at how effective both were in those brief moments in making me, suddenly care and really feel something for just a few seconds. So that was really welcome. As far as the stunts and visuals go, there was some neat stuff in this. It's not neat in terms of groundbreaking and looking realistic, but just in terms of the visual gags. Despite my big disconnect from nearly the entire script, the visual gags were fun to see. I mean, whether in action scenes or as incidental background details, the creative use of both the shrinking and enlarging abilities showcased how really wide the applications are for what seemed like a couple of really simple powers. Very cool stuff. I always love seeing that happen. I remember when Mark Waid took over writing for The Flash in somewhere in the 90s and created, along with I think someone else being involved in the process, creating the idea of the Speed Force and just taking this idea of, hey, he's a guy who can go fast, and then applying physics to it and just seeing all the kinds of weird, crazy stuff you could pull off with a simple power like moving really fast, And I feel like they've been going into that territory with these Ant-Man movies, and really playing around with pseudoscience in order to expand the application of these powers. And so that's really cool. I love seeing creative use of what seem like at the outset very simple power sets in superheroes. As far as relevance, is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes here that might stimulate worthwhile thought or conversation? I don't know. I'm going to spend more time talking about this first one than I should, just because it takes some explaining, but really it was, of the two things I'm going to mention, just a little blip on my radar. And that blip on my radar was when an antagonistic, goody-two-shoes FBI agent, who we are clearly supposed to find annoying and troublesome to the hero throughout the movie, also identified himself as a youth pastor. It felt like if I were to take a guess, I'm guessing it was kind of a thoughtless joke that made it made no logical sense in the context. I don't know what FBI agent is going to have time to be a youth pastor. It almost felt like an improvised line that they're like, oh yeah, that's good, let's keep that in the cut, or whatever. And in a lot of ways, it just felt like one more symptom of what seemed like a messy writing process to me. I wasn't offended by it. I don't need, representation of any demographic I happen to be a part of in my fiction. I think we are prioritizing the wrong sources if we're expecting or hoping for self-affirmation in our entertainment. But it just reminded me of the status quo in the push for representation in entertainment. How many examples can I come up with of a supporting character in mainstream entertainment who is a Bible-believing Christian and not also a hypocrite or just some kind of antagonist in the plot, with all the kind of focus on representation and seeing growth in those areas, which is not anything that I'm opposed to. I just find it interesting that when it comes to that kind of Christian character in movies, I am coming up with nothing. I don't expect that to change. Just making an observation. But by contrast, and I'm going to spend less time talking about this, but it was the much stronger impression I was left with thematically from the movie. I really loved that in this flick, family was given value. Family was given attention. Family relationships in terms of moms and dads and their relationships with their kids, both in childhood and as adults, parent-child relationships. There were some brief romantic sparks between Ant-Man and the Wasp, but it wasn't the focus. A lot more relational moments were given to parents and kids, whether it was Scott's relationship with his daughter or Evangeline Lilly, I can't remember her character's name, her relationship with her dad and her mom. So it was really cool to see that strand of human relationship momentarily override the shallow, oversexed subplots that are much more common in entertainment. And I think there's a ton of potential for them to take the theme of family even further in the next Ant-Man movie, if there is one. And I hope that there is. Now, I have no idea what your tastes in movies are, but if I were a time traveler, I would go back in time and say, Peter, skip, skippity skip. It doesn't follow the trend of Spider-Man Homecoming, whose humor felt more naturally character-driven to you, or the trend of Black Panther and Infinity War, which were allowed to have some dramatic weight. It's not the near spoof that Thor Ragnarok was, but still pretty close on the spectrum. Not your kind of movie. For a superhero comedy that will actually function for you as a comedy, go rewatch the Amazon Prime seasons of The Tick. All right, rated PG-13 for some sci-fi action and violence. That's all I've got to say about it. I'd love to get your thoughts in the comments below, and then please like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you don't miss the next video that I put out. And then I hope you'll join us over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue. Can I get it in my... I can't get it in my peripheral vision. As we continue, I should somehow keep this open, maybe. Continue to geek out and seek the truth.
Let's begin.
Burn, ungodly filth!
What do you want to make you ours or to make you despair?
Spirit Blade Productions presents
Did you have any idea how much I will make you suffer? The horrific agony that I will inflict.
Spirit Blade Dark Ritual.
Hell will be a refuge for you when I'm finished.
For more information, visit spiritblade.com.